Hi, it's Katrina, and today I have my second quarter wrap up. Right at the start of the year, I decided against doing monthly wrap ups because I'm focusing more kind of on the larger books and not a month to month number of books I've read. However, I still really like ranking my books, sort of comparing one to the other, how I've really enjoyed them, and wrapping them up periodically. So today I'm going to be talking about, in order from least favourite to favourite, the books I've read in the months of April, May and June 2017. I'm going to fix this camera angle. Better. My least favourite book I read this month was Bitter Spirits by Jen Bennett. This is a paranormal romance book, heavy on the romance, and though I think this was probably a good example of the genre, there is a reason I don't generally read romance novels. I'm just not that interested in sex scenes. Sorry. It's kind of a shame because one of my YouTube friends, Hannah from A Cup of Wonderland, sent me this for my Christmas and I really appreciated that, but I think romance books just aren't for me. This is set in 1920s San Francisco and follows a relationship between a medium and a local bootlegger. There are some Asian influences, few of the stereotypes, and that annoyed me, and I didn't love it. It's just, romance books just aren't for me, unfortunately. This is one I actually had fun with, but thought was really bad, and that is The Improbability of Love by Hannah Rothschild. I mostly listened to this on audiobook, but I also picked up the physical copy. This was nominated for the Bailey's Women's Prize for Fiction in 2016, which I'm sort of confused by. It was shortlisted. This follows the story of Annie McD, who stumbles upon an extremely valuable painting accidentally in a junk shop, and how that sort of affects her life and those around her. It follows a lot of different characters who end up bidding on this painting. I'll link the review I talked about this down below. It is the 3 Love Stories of Sorts video. I thought this was highly stereotypical, quite tangential, generally quite poorly written. However, I did think it was quite funny and I was entertained throughout, so I will give it that. However, definitely not a favourite of mine. And this book had one of the worst, most disappointing endings of any book I've ever read. Next we have How to Be Bad by E. Lockhart, Lauren Miracle and Sarah Milankowski. This one is a lot of fun. It was just much younger than I am as the audience. I've had it for a long time and I bought it even when I was slightly too old for it, but it's still fun. I really enjoy E. Lockhart. The Disreputable History of Frankie Lydell Banks is one of my favourite books, and I did have fun with it. This is a fun road trip book following 3 friends from Florida. It sort of tackles class and friendships, not judging a book by its cover, that kind of thing. I did enjoy this, but again, not a favourite. This one I actually mostly listened to on audiobook, and that is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This is one of his standalone fantasy novels. His Mistborn trilogy is one of my all-time favourite trilogies, and I'm really always interested to read more from him, and I'm trying to do that more often. However, I didn't love the magic system in this. I thought it was quite poorly explained. This has a magic system which is a blend of colours and breath and power, and it takes him about 150 pages to explain it, and even then you're still trying to get your head around it up and towards the 500 page mark. So I will be able to explain this succinctly here. This at its heart is more a relationship story. The title I think is quite misleading because there's no war in this book whatsoever. There's actually very little action. There's a couple of fight scenes, and there's a lot of talk of war and the total destruction of a people, but we don't even get anywhere close to that, which I thought was kind of disappointing. This follows 2 sisters. The older, Vivina, has been raised her whole life to become the wife of a god king in the neighbouring country. However, at the last minute, their father decides to send the younger sister, I can't remember the name of, Siri, instead, who is sort of a wild child, hasn't been raised with much structure, and she gets sent off to become the wife to this god king when she's about 16 years old. There's a lot of moral questions are confronted in this, judgment of other people's cultures, engagement as a ruler in the fate of your country, and sort of the lengths you'll go to and the lengths you will deviate from your religion in order to protect the sanctity of that, your culture, your country, which is based on that religion, which is kind of interesting. What let this down is I think that the magic system was quite clunky and poorly explained, though it was interesting. I hate that thing where we talk for hundreds of pages about the devastating effect that a war will have on the country, and you're gearing up to it and you're gearing up to it, this big showdown, and it just doesn't happen. It's very Twilight Breaking Dawn, and that just knocked it quite far down for me in this, but I did enjoy listening to this story. Next up we have The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I have a whole standalone review of this, which I will link below. Really enjoyed it, totally get why people love this book and it's one of their favourites. However, I just hated the main romance in this novel. I thought that Celia and Marco made no sense whatsoever. This is about a travelling circus, which is the stage for a supposedly epic magical battle between these two young magician apprentices. It's very atmospheric and slow moving, and again, relatively low payoff in my opinion. But I did enjoy it, and I was totally sucked in this. When I was reading it, I was really reading it, and then I got to the end and I felt a little flat. Glad I read it finally, and you know, one day I really might reread this. However, just a few definite flaws. So now we're really into the books I really enjoyed reading this quarter, which includes A Concise Chinese English Dictionary for Lovers by Xiaolu Guo. This I talk about in the same video as I talk about The Probability of Love. This is a really interesting novel. It has a great structure. It follows a young Chinese girl who's come to London for a year to study English. At the start, it's written in extremely broken English, and it progresses in quality, in stops and starts and waves throughout the novel. You're totally swept away. She has a relationship with an older man, and we follow her throughout her time in London, and also a brief spell where she's travelling in Europe. This was really captivating. I read this all in one day. First time I'd done that in months and months, and I really enjoyed it. Highly recommend. Very underrated book, I think. I also read 100 Shadows by Hwang Jung-yoon, translated by Jung Yu-won. This is a Korean novel, sort of short novella set in Seoul. This follows two young people who are in sort of the outskirts of society, and their livelihood and their way of life is threatened. They work in a local electronics market which is sort of failing financially and is being constantly threatened with demolition, and they have this sort of tentative relationship that's starting. There's a sort of fantasy element involved as well, wherein people have these shadows that can rise, and if they follow them, they get sucked into this sort of depression and death, which is really interesting. And obviously this is starting to affect these two people who are on this sort of outskirts brink of society with a lot of turbulent things going on in their lives. It's quiet and underwritten and just really beautiful, sort of a snapshot novel. There's no clear, you know, plot line, resolution or aim, but I just adored it. And if you are like me and really enjoy like a good depressing novel, in a lot of ways this sort of had vibes of We've Always Lived in the Castle or Ethan Frome about it, and I really enjoyed it. From one extreme to the other, we have Geekerella by Ashley Poston. I loved this. This is a super sweet Cinderella retelling. Our main character is a huge fan of this fantasy series called Starfield, which is getting a reboot, and the Prince Charming of this story is the main lead actor, who our main character actually hates, and she ends up texting him, not realising that it is actually the lead actor. This is super sweet, it's super fun, there's some really heart-wrenching moments in it, great conflict. All the essential plot points are ticked off, as you know, one by one, and you feel sort of that comforting rhythm of the familiar Cinderella story, but you're still compelled of how they're going to twist it all around and bring each thing in and who all the characters are. I really, really enjoyed this book. I can't wait to read more by Ashley Poston. I don't read a lot of YA nowadays, and generally when I do, I find it quite disappointing, but this was just like gorgeous, and it was like a big old slice of cake, and I loved it. I really recommend this. Something on the more hard-hitting end of YA is The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. This has been universally praised across the board, and all I can do is add my praise to that. This is inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement. This follows our main character, Star, who witnesses the murder of her unarmed best friend, Khalil, and how that affects her life. It tears apart her community. She goes to school in a primarily white affluent neighbourhood and lives in a primarily black poor neighbourhood. Her father has been mixed up with gangs there in the past. Star has this amazing voice that's so powerful throughout this book. I really, really enjoyed it. I felt so much when I read this, and it was a story from the perspective which is completely alien to me, life and experience that's completely different to mine, and it's stories like this that make you realise how important representation is. I also recently, just like the rest of the world, read Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and I have been watching the TV series. Controversial opinion, not loving it. There's a few things that are just different to the book, and I think that the book is shocking enough without those other details that have been added in. I stopped watching about the third episode. I might watch more. It's being shown on Channel 4 here in the UK, and I do recommend you check it out. However, I think I seem to be enjoying the book. I seem to have enjoyed the book more, and don't think that the TV series is actually adding to my enjoyment of the story. This is set in a near future society where massive infertility rates have led to societal upheaval. The US government is being overthrown, and the constitution has been disbanded or cancelled, or whatever the word is, and a country, the Republic of Gilead, has been formed. Our main character, Offred, has had a child in the past, and now is a handmaid. So there's all these different ranks of women, and basically those who are fertile have become slaves to the government, and reduced purely to their fertility, as sort of vessels for childbearing. This has increased in popularity recently in this book because of the TV series, and also because of political parallels in the US right now. Really, really interesting. I thought this was quite simply written, and very atmospheric. I love the last couple of chapters. I think they add so much to it as a consideration, as a story, and as a comment on society. Can't wait to read more of Atwood's work. Recently on audiobook, I listened to Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, and I am obsessed with that book. So different to what I thought it was going to be, and so captivating, much more captivating than I expected it to be. I thought classic of science fiction, just thought it would be a bit more cheesy / boring. But this has a frantic pace to it. I talk a bit more about this actually in my most recent video, which was my currently reading / reading plans. And I mean, the book was great. I didn't 100% love the ending, but it didn't detract at all from the story. This again has themes of government censorship and government control. I really recommend the audiobook for this. I'll leave the one that I listened to link below. It has this sort of galloping rhythmic pace, and you're just swept along in the story. Really excited to read more Bradbury. I actually think my next is going to be Dandelion Wine, because Yamini over at the Skeptical Reader recently read this and she's been raving about that. So, and I mean, I completely implicitly trust everything that Yamini says. So that is going to be the next Bradbury I pick up. Right after this, I'm going to go see if I can find the audiobook, actually. That's a good plan. Another book I listened to on audiobook, and oh, I love this book, was Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I I listened to this on audiobook, decided to buy the physical copy. The UK cover is just really ugly in my opinion. I wanted the US one because it's so much prettier. And then I went on Book Depository and accidentally wasn't really paying attention and bought the large print edition. I enjoy the fact that large print editions exist for the visually impaired community. You know, I'm all about inclusion and equal access, etc. I'm not visually impaired, I don't need this. And yeah, I mean, so now I can reread this whenever I want, and I can reread this at arm's length or further if I want to. But I'm not going to send it back because it's my own fault for not paying attention. But it's still very beautiful, even though it's giant. This follows a few intertwining characters in the immediate aftermath and about 15 years after this apocalyptic pandemic, this flu, which has wiped out 95% of the population or more of planet Earth. It's set in Canada, primarily among this travelling symphony, and it's a troupe of musicians and actors who both play classical music and perform Shakespearean plays. It's really atmospheric, this novel. In a lot of ways it's quite similar to The Night Circus without the awkward shoehorning of a romance into it. And this just has all these different intertwining lives, flashing back to their lives before the flu wiped out the world, how people manage in this society. Really, really gorgeous and like multi-layered. I really recommend you to pick this up in the normal print edition and to try out the audiobook, which again I also really, really enjoyed. I was surprised by how much I loved this book. All the time people tell me this is their favourite book, or I hear it mentioned all the time on YouTube, and I never really thought much of picking it up. To be honest, I thought it was a YA book, so I didn't bother. But when I saw it on Audible's Daily Deal, I thought, oh, I might as well just give it a go, and oh, it was just gorgeous. I really, really, really loved this book a lot. Into my top two now, and I'm going to say that these last two books are sort of equal loves. I really could not pick which one I loved more. And the penultimate book I'm going to talk about today is Ship of Destiny by Robin Hobb, the epic conclusion to the Live Ship Traders trilogy. Now, I'm going to say it, clang, here it is, my all-time favourite trilogy. I loved this trilogy. Very, very little I can say about this book in specific, obviously massive spoilers. This is a high fantasy series focusing a lot on ships and sailing, but it's better than that makes it sound. There's a lot of intertwining lives. The character development in this trilogy is just absolutely phenomenal. There's one character in particular, Malta Vestrit, who at the start is just this ratty teenage girl who only cares about herself, and you hate her and you kind of pray for her downfall a little bit, and by the end I was like weeping with my love of Malta. So I just loved this trilogy so much. I'm gonna have a whole video coming out about this, video review on Sunday, so look out for that, where I may weep with joy with my love of this book. I'm not exaggerating. I loved this trilogy. I loved it. I loved it so much. And my other joint favourite book I read this quarter is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This is the first in her new trilogy. I'm not so sure if this is a trilogy or a series or a duology. I think it's a duology actually. Again, I have a whole standalone review about this where I rave about it and talk about how much I love it. This is another fantasy story. Our main character, Laszlo Strange, was initially raised by some monks and then found his way to this library of Zosma, where he became a librarian. He spent most of his life being really quite downtrodden and disregarded by the people around him, particularly the scholars, and he's sort of, you know, the librarians are basically just there to do their bidding. He's obsessed with the story of this one town known only as Weep. It is sort of forgotten in history. There used to be a lot of communication between Zosma, other parts of the world, and this town, which is now only known as Weep, its true name being lost. And this is sort of his own special fascination. Then one day, into town rolls this whole cavalcade of people from Weep looking for people to help them with a problem they're having, unspecified at that point of the book. And Laszlo volunteers and he gets swept up in this adventure. There's another character in this story called Sarai, and there's very little I can say about her which without spoiling, but I really enjoyed her character also. This is a really magical story. I love Laini Taylor's writing. It's really, really poetic, very flowery in a lot of ways, but I think well pitched. I don't think it's overly flowery at all. I went and got this signed by Laini Taylor at an author event she had at my local Waterstones, which was just epic. And oh, I love her writing. I can't wait to read more in this series, and like everything Laini Taylor ever produces. But again, I will link my full review of that if you want to go see more raving ramblings about this book. So there we go, that is what I read in the second quarter of 2017. I have a first quarter wrap up already up if you'd like to go see that. I will link it below. Let me know what you've been reading so far this year, what you've been enjoying, anything I should pick up. Have you read any of these? Did you like them? Comment below. Subscribe if you want to see more videos from me. I'm uploading about 3 times a week. You can also follow me on Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter, all of which are linked below. Thanks for watching. Bye. Next up we have the next circle.